Today we're going to do a comment video. We're going to look at your comments and I'm going to offer my thoughts. Hi, Tony DeWitt here. I'm a Missouri appellate attorney, retired, and I bring you a fresh perspective on the law without offering any legal advice. So pull up a chair. This is what we're discussing today. Every now and again, I like to do a comment video because sometimes, particularly like with this Lori Daybell case, a video I do will create a number of people making points, and some of them are so good, they probably ought to be a video unto themselves. But I thought I would take some of them and look at them and share my thoughts about these comments because so many of them have been very, very good. Here's the first one: a person convicted of filicide acting self righteous. Initially, when I did the video, I just thought she was acting clueless and a little ham-handed. But then I thought about that interaction with the woman who told her not to flatter herself. And I realized she was trying to essentially convict that woman of dating a married man as if she was some homewrecker. And I wondered if it was because she just didn't want Charles to have anybody in his life that made him happy. And I suspect there's part of that there, but I missed the whole self-righteousness aspect of it. And this lady makes a really good point. She was being self-righteous and she's already been convicted of killing her children. I mean, how can that person act self-righteous? Kind of a strange thing there. And then in response to my video on the Sturmer trial, Anita Holst there wrote, Wolfgang is a good attorney, really love his persona. I think a lot of people like the fact that Wolfgang was kind of a bulldog, kind of a wolf, if you will. He certainly attacked some of those witnesses and some of the testimony like a wolf. I don't think there's any doubt that he did his level best to try and keep Sturmer out of prison. And I think, for the most part, his efforts ought to be acknowledged for what they are. A defense lawyer doesn't adopt the views or beliefs of their client. He doesn't ratify their bad decisions. What he does is he stands as an obstacle between the state and the defendant, and his job as that obstacle is to prevent the state from getting by with using incompetent or insufficient evidence to get a conviction. And in that regard, I think he did a very, very good job. And then this next one sort of made me smile too. The objections that you have to LD's questioning, I have to a lot of the questions asked by other attorneys of witnesses. I often scratch my head. What's that all about? I believe I get called if I get called for jury duty, I should admit that I'm not mentally up to the challenge and I have a very decent IQ. Well, I have no doubt that you have a decent IQ. I think a lot of lawyers feel that way when they watch trials. But the funny thing about being up on your feet, engaged in sometimes what feels like mortal combat without weapons in a trial, you get focused on what you're doing and the rest of the world just goes away. It fades into oblivion. And you are focused on that witness and you are asking your questions. And yeah, sometimes they don't make any sense to people watching. They make sense to you, and if they make sense to the witness will answer, and if it doesn't make sense, the witness will go, "Huh?" Which again causes the other party to jump up and say, "I object to that vague question." And that's not really a legal objection. Generally speaking, the witness has to tell you if the question is vague. But a lot of times defense lawyers will do that to sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hey, you don't have to answer that question. But again, I think a lot of times when I go through these trials and I do the trials and I watch the videos, I'm just aghast at some of the questions, like Skip's questions in the Sturmer trial. Some of them were just the wrong question to ask. And as I pointed out before, he obviously failed cross-examination school because he didn't know how to cross-examine a witness for beans. But again, I think those are excellent observations and I appreciate them. Now, this next one, sir, will you list the three most compelling evidences that prove she's guilty with no reasonable doubt? Now, she here is Lori Daybell. And I think the majority of it is all circumstantial evidence. The fact that she stood to profit from the murders, the fact that she believed that she had a life insurance policy that was worth a lot of money and that she was going to be rich after he left this mortal coil. And that didn't turn out. And her text message to Chad Daybell to the effect of, hey, I lost out on that money because as it turns out, he changed his policy. So those are the things that I think are most probative at this point. But you have to remember, we're not even halfway through the trial yet, I don't think. I don't know if she's going to call witnesses or not, but so far, I think yesterday was day 5. Today will be day 6. I have to go back through day 5 and take a look at some of the testimony. If you guys tell me that you want me to continue to follow that trial, I'll do that. But again, you need to give me some feedback on that if you would. Now, I can be somewhat irreverent from time to time. Yeah, the diagnostic DSM, the diagnostic manual that doctors use to diagnose or to code diseases. I said her diagnosis was Looney Tunes, and I have to do a little humor now and then, just because if you don't laugh at some of this stuff, you you get depressed. And Cowboy here makes a statement, says that's one heck of a life she's been living. Absolute monster. I can't really disagree. I I have been in a situation where my wife at the time was unfaithful. And it really hurt, left me heartbroken. I was, very upset about it. And at some point, I got angry. I didn't strike out or hurt anybody, but I did get angry. But at no time did I think, wow, the solution to my problem is to get rid of my problem, meaning that person. So I can't really understand the psychology that goes into figuring out that the best way to rid yourself of a problem is to give yourself a much bigger problem, like defending your life in a courtroom. So I tend to agree with this. And I don't, as the absolute monster, honestly, I think she has a mental disease at this point. I think the disease and the monster comes out through that. And certainly people who are, to use another term from the DSM, wackadoodle, I certainly think that some of them can be monsters. Now, this point from another blonde is also rather interesting. The jury are lay people, and Lori is not a lawyer. What I feel she was trying to do with her brother is trigger some family incident between her and him that might have been inappropriate, as she is alleged to have had with her brother Alex. Regardless of the trial outcome, she is going to go to Hades and she doesn't care who she takes down with her. I think that's a pretty good analysis too. I don't think she does care who she takes down with her. And if she winds up destroying family relationships in the process, oh well, they probably weren't that strong to begin with. That's the way those kinds of people think. And then JT says, I can fix her. I can fix her too. We put her in a 8 by 10 cage for the rest of her life. I think that will fix her pretty well. And then I made fun of the question that she asked about her green enchiladas, her green chili enchiladas. And this lady says, the green enchilada question was probably to show the male jurors what a respectable housewife she is. Flirtation by proxy. And then Tiffany Sweeney says, it's classic narcissist. How could you not remember everything about me? Have you ever met people like that? You don't remember the last time we saw each other? No. And they're amazed by that because they're so memorable, at least when they look in the mirror, they are. I think Lori is one of those people who, when she looks in the mirror, sees somebody who is just unforgettable, but The rest of us are not going to have a hard time forgetting her when this trial is over. And then this I thought was probably a very helpful comment for many of us here. I'm going to try to see if I can make that a little easier to read here. Um, and the answer to that is no. I am an ex LDS person. If you are a member of the church or a former member of the church, you understand what she was saying. She is talking about prophets that were on earth hundreds of years ago that received revelation from God and were translated to a higher mortal power. If you now understand this and go back to her questioning, she is telling on herself that she believes she is a higher mortal with power or she is godlike. This came out in her mental health evaluation in Idaho that she has grandiose ideas about religion that are not realistic, as well as narcissistic personality. That's narcissistic personality disorder. Believing that she is God, and in her previous trial in Idaho, she believed she was married to Chad before and that she has lived multiple times in multiple spheres of reality. This belief that she has her that she has a higher translated God. She believed that she was a god and that these people around her were dark or zombies, and I needed to remove them or to release the zombie from the mortal body. Well, those are pretty significantly warped beliefs, and um, I actually kind of feel sorry for somebody who gets so wrapped up in something like this that they they believe the lies they tell themselves. They know they're lies when they start telling them. But then over time, they come to adopt them and believe them, and they become gospel, no pun intended. And I think that may very well be what's happening with her. And then Laura Jean Lister says, hey, I really like the DSM Looney Tunes and bring out Johnny Cash singing I've Been Everywhere, man. Again, I apologize for my humor, but I do have fun when I do these because, like I said, if you don't have fun, what are you living for? And then Gary Morse says, what else does Lori have to do with her time? Sit in prison? This is her only chance to have some time out of the Gray Bar Hotel. Yeah, she's probably sinking her ship, but from her point of view, what does she have to lose? Well, absolutely nothing. She's going to be in jail for life in Idaho. It's probably not a very good place to be in prison anyway, but she's going to be there. And Jacqueline says she wants everyone to think she is hot and sexy. That seems to be one of her main goals in life. I can't disagree with that either. See, I told you some of these comments are just absolute gold, and I really appreciate the people who make comments because you make my life a lot easier. A lot of times, like the lady explaining the LDS stuff, that made a lot of stuff in this thing make sense. And I would not have wanted to go down the rabbit hole of trying to figure all that out. So I have great commenters and great people who subscribe to my channel who help me out in that regard. Kevin Hornbuckle says she probably gave the zombies poisoned green chicken enchiladas. Chicken green chili enchiladas. Sorry. And then Tiffany laughed at that one. And then, while I've had a little bit of fun so far, I want to go serious here. I want you to listen to this comment and take it for what it is. Not my favorite video. I live on $940 a month. I'm homeless in my mid 60s. I cannot get dental care, had to pull my teeth out. I cannot get the stomach operation I need because I have nowhere to recover, and the hospital refuses to admit me if they might get stuck with the bill. My car just blew a head gasket, so now I'm completely on the bus since I cannot afford the repair. I worked my whole life as a non compensated caretaker, first to my grandparents, and then she goes on to share in the actual comment that they died from COPD. Essentially, it bankrupted them. She doesn't have any money. So I responded back to her and I said, I'm very sorry for your situation. If you're on Medicare at this point, you should be able to get help dealing with your health care issues. Medicaid provides low income health care for seniors in most states if you are not on Medicare. In Alabama, they have a care network that provides rides to doctor's offices, etc. I believe you've given a lot in your life, and I hope you can find a program to serve you. I will gladly pay my taxes to help someone like you. I think my video came off kind of as me feeling sorry for myself about the taxes. That really wasn't what it was intended to be. Again, it was intended to be a little bit funny. That's why I had the AI program there draw the IRS tax monster. Um, but it sometimes helps to have people bring you back down to reality and say, some of these taxes, and other people did this too, but I thought this was the most salient point. A lot of those taxes go to help people like walk your dog because obviously they need that help. Now you may be wondering, and I had a couple of emails about this comment. One person said, "Well, how is she even responding to you? How's she watching your channel if she's had all these problems?" Well, she probably has a phone and she probably watches on her phone. And there's lots of places you can get free Wi-Fi. So I think that may very well explain how she gets to the channel. But more importantly, I don't have any reason to judge her on that. If she's part of the channel and she comments, I enjoy that. I appreciate that. And there are a lot of people out there that are not even living paycheck to paycheck. They're basically living hand to mouth sometimes. And I think sometimes we forget that. But I responded to her, and then she responded to me. And as you can see down below, she says, "I'm on Medicaid and grateful to those who pay their taxes and support those of us who cannot. I agree the government wastes money horribly. I'm not a fan of our excessive military spending." And she closes with, "You have an excellent channel. Thank you." Well, I like to think I have a good channel, but it's people like her that make my channel good. It's people like all of you who comment and help and engage in the discussion. If you would, let me know if you find these kinds of videos where we talk about the comments helpful, because I'm certainly willing to do more of them. And again, any feedback you have, drop it in the comments or send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. And that's what I have today. That's what I have for you today. I hope you found it helpful, interesting, or maybe both. If there's a subject you'd like me to discuss, please feel free to send me an email at the address above. If you like what we do, please feel free to subscribe and come on back to the beach tomorrow. I release videos every weekday, weather and work permitting. If you have the opportunity today, do a kindness for your fellow man. It makes the world a better place, one kind act at a time. And now, YouTube has some suggestions for other videos of mine that you might like.